Hello, this is Lauren Sonnenberg with LifeCore, and welcome to our very first mind body talk on chronic pain, which we're going to be holding every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The thing that I promised to talk about today was the number one factor that you need to know about chronic pain. And we're talking about musculoskeletal pain today. And that covers a broad range of pain. There's a lot of chronic pain, but musculoskeletal is a big piece of that. So take a deep breath, and I'm going to tell you this: the majority of musculoskeletal pain, chronic pain, is an indication of healing versus the body worsening. So let me say that one more time. I'm going to streamline it. The majority of chronic pain is an indication of healing versus your body worsening. And if you're hearing that and really letting that sink in, if you're someone with chronic pain, you may have some mixed emotions around that. Some people could be hopeful and relieved. Other people may be maybe angry. This has happened. People could be in disbelief, like shock and disbelief, like, oh, surprised. And then there could be the disbelief side that speaks more to the cognitive piece, like, yeah, that's just not fitting in my brain, Lauren. Like, chronic pain doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good, therefore it can't be doing anything positive for my body. What are you talking about? What books have you been reading? Why are you feeding me this line? And so it does help when the science behind it is explained. Of course, that's going to be helpful. So comment below if you're having any reactions, any thoughts or feelings about this, because it's a pretty heavy topic, but it's also, even though it is a heavy topic and something big to digest, it's also one that once this knowledge is integrated and once you know what to do with it, can be the very thing that allows your mind-body wellness to be unstuck from the patterns that it's been in and to move forward with moving in the direction of relief. And for many people, that means getting rid of pain. That's a bigger bite to chew off for some people, so let's just keep it in the relief category for right now. Because I know that if most people could get at least 50% relief of their chronic pain, they'd be jumping for joy and doing whatever it took to line up with that. So we're just going to talk about how you can move in the direction of relief, and we're not going to climb big mountains today, just baby steps, okay? So we have this science, and I talk about mind-body science, and I use that as a general term, but a lot of times I'm referring specifically, when I'm speaking about mind-body science, to the science known as German New Medicine. I learned about it, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I think it was. Time flies. And it took a while for the concepts to really sink in because it's a total paradigm shift from anything that we've grown up with or learned in school. I'm a psychotherapist. I didn't go to medical school, so it's a lot of heavy, intense information, and it's also a lot of it's contrary to the conventional medical theories. So I'm going to share with you as best I can in the way that's not going to overload you, and yet it's going to hopefully give you what you need to understand about it. So when a disease occurs, let's pick any chronic pain, let's pick fibromyalgia, for example. You have an initiating biological conflict, according to German New Medicine. I call it a bio-emotional conflict, which you'll understand why in a bit. And that conflict, when activated, when experienced and internalized within the body, starts the conflict active phase of a disease. I'm putting disease in quotes because they don't really call it a disease. They call it a functional response of the body. And you'll see why. So if that conflict, which I'm going to explain more about in a moment, is resolved, then we go into the healing phase. So a two-part phase for every disease, providing that you are able to get the conflict resolved. So conflict active phase, conflict resolution, or healing phase. I'm going to refer to it as the healing phase. There are also more technical terms, but we're just going to keep it as easy as possible today. So let's talk about a specific kind of biological conflict, or as I like to call it, bio-emotional conflict. Because there's emotional, because there's almost inevitably an emotion involved, and because of the shock of the biological conflict. It doesn't always mean, oh my goodness, spider in the wall, kind of shock. It can be, it absolutely can be, but more as something that hits you hard. Maybe nobody sees you flinch when somebody says something that kind of just gets under your skin, but you felt it. You felt it down deep. It reminded you of what, a parent said to you, 30 years ago, and it just, somebody at work said something to you, or, your spouse or whoever said something to you, and it really got you. And you said, that was a zinger. So something that you experience as a zinger, non-technical term, is most likely going to be internalized as some conflict shock. So with the case of most of the musculoskeletal, we're talking about bones, muscles, connective tissue, the joints, we're dealing with a self-devaluation conflict when we are talking about pain. And that self-devaluation conflict is in the healing phase by the time we are experiencing that pain. Now, there are other conflicts that can happen related to the skin over the bone. That's a separate conflict for another day. Okay, that's more of a cold pain when that's involved with certain conflicts, versus more of a stinging kind of pain, cold pain, versus the hot pain that you feel with a lot of the chronic pain symptoms. And also muscles can be impacted by other conflicts, like things that involve paralysis, motor conflicts. We're going to save that for another day too. So today we're primarily talking about self-devaluation conflicts. Okay, you said, Lauren, what's a self-devaluation conflict? Okay, so a self-devaluation conflict is one that's experienced when you internalize and you hear something, you feel put down. It's either something that somebody said to you or something that you've done or not done, and you've interpreted that as I'm not worthwhile, I'm no good in that area. You took a test, you totally bombed it. There's an intellectual self-devaluation potentially. We can experience devaluations at certain bodily sites, like a woman who's had a mastectomy. They often wonder, okay, well, you've taken all of that tissue away. Why then does a person go and get a bone cancer in that area? There's a self-devaluation conflict involved. And by the time you feel the bone pain, you are actually in the healing phase. But that part of the body then experiences self-devaluation, not for everybody, but for people who see themselves as less worthwhile, maybe less womanly, less than in some way. And that's certainly not the only example, but that's one of the common themes that come to mind when we're talking about self-devaluation. Athletes can experience self-devaluation. Any human being can. You could be standing online with a tray at work and drop it and feel clumsy. That could feel like a self-devaluation, like, oh, my hands aren't good enough to hold this. And the mind body, and the next person could interpret that as an entirely different event if they're going through it. It's not going to be interpreted the same way by everybody. So that's a little bit about the broad scope of what self-devaluation conflicts are about. Feeling less than in some way. Somebody puts you down or you put yourself down. Okay. So while you're experiencing that self-devaluation conflict, your cells in that area of the body, whether we're talking about bone tissue or muscle tissue, or other connective tissue that are involved, they start to go through something called necrosis. And that sounds pretty bad. And what it means is cell loss. Okay. And most times you're not going to know that's going on at all. Most times. And then what's going to happen is you're going to go on with your life, and pow, out of the clear blue, you're going to have pain in the healing phase. Maybe it's a little, maybe it's a lot. Normally, it's in proportion to how intensely experienced the conflict itself was. Okay. So here I can start to explain the massive implications of the factor I mentioned to you, that is the topic of today's discussion. How important it is to know that the pain is a healing sign. If you don't know that pain that's coming about when you then start to resolve the conflict, and then here's the physical response. This is you have swelling, pain, inflammation in the area or areas involved. This is all driven by the brain. The brain has specific relay locations that link to the body. All these ties are set up when you're just an embryo. So embryology explains this, and German New Medicine takes embryology and takes it right to the next level and totally maps it all out. Okay. So now you have this pain, this swelling, this inflammation. Why? When you have an increased blood flow to the area, you bring more nutrients into the area, and you need nutrients to rebuild those cells that formerly in the conflict active phase were broken down. Swelling is protective for that area, which, even though is healing, is often it's more fragile during that healing phase so that it can get stronger. More sensitive in that healing phase so that it can get stronger. Those cells are rebuilding. So the biological function of all this, the mind body's not just doing this for, let's make their lives interesting, throw a little pain at them. No. The biological function that Dr. Hammer, who was the person who figured out, he was a German physician who figured out this German New Medicine in the late 70s, early 80s, found that there's a biological function for every disease of the body. So if a person experiences a self-devaluation conflict, the mind body's so smart, and it says, okay, we're going to rebuild that area and make it even stronger than it was in the first place. Okay. Getting better is often painful. We know this. We've had fevers. We've had nausea. We've had stomach aches, diarrhea, all the nasty things that we don't like to experience. Not all of them, but most of them are happening in the healing phase. There are exceptions, and there's a reason for those exceptions. So, but a lot of the stuff, colds, flus, all of that's in the healing phase. Not fun. But when you know the science behind it, it takes away one major factor: fear. Because then you can say, cause and effect. I know what's happening here. I may not like it, but I can handle something I don't like, especially when I know that it's supposed to come. This was predictable. I knew it was coming. And even if this is the first time you're hearing this, so you didn't know it was predictable the time your pain came on, but you do know now cause and effect. Okay, this happened, something happened. You might not even know what the self-devaluation or devaluations were yet, but I can see the effect of it. I know exactly what's happening. That takes away the fear, and that it shifts me from a victim mentality to an empowered mentality. Because when you're a victim, I'm not saying you're sitting there asking to be a victim, oh, and pity me, poor me. You're saying, I don't know how this happened. And maybe you're not even able to get clear answers as to why it's happening and why it keeps happening and why it gets worse, because some of the existing science doesn't really explain it the way German New Medicine does. So it empowers a person because now you know. A person who's getting exposed to the science then starts to have the answers, especially when you look into the information, you repeat it, and it you kind of start to see the connections and the ties. So it takes away the fear, and it gives you power, and then it also really helps to stop the chronicity of the pain, because what you don't do now is create a new cycle of self-evaluation. So I'm going to break this down. There are three things that can happen. We have our conflict active phase. We start to go into the conflict resolution or healing phase. Okay, great. So if you're not reactivating the initial conflict, what then happens is that you could go through this and heal. Okay, but let's say the conflict is reactivated. So now you go back to the beginning or close to the beginning. You have to go through the cycle again. So that feels chronic. So chronicity can happen because the original conflict is reactivated. So that's called a hanging healing, because it just keeps on going in circles. Okay, it gets repeated. Or chronic pain can happen because the old conflict wasn't activated, but I'm experiencing my pain as a new self-evaluation. Look, there's something wrong with me. Maybe you didn't even internalize that the first couple of times you had pain, but now that you're having trouble getting to work, or now that you're having trouble, lifting something, or now that you're having trouble walking up the stairs, or whatever it is, lifting up a spoon potentially. Now you're having trouble doing that. That becomes its own new self-evaluation. And as you can imagine, that snowballs, because one self-evaluation can lead to another, And so that's how the cycle continues. And then what you can have is then the third one is the combination of those new or old conflicts reactivated. Let's say the self-evaluation is coming from a relationship that you're in and you're feeling put down by that person almost all the time, once every week, if not more. So it's a constant bombardment of self-evaluation. Then you have your interpretation of the pain and the healing signs, which you don't know are pain and healing signs. And so that compounds all that self-evaluation. And this just turns into the chronic pain you're experiencing. So that's a lot of information. We're not quite done yet. So feel free to put your comments in, like, Lauren, you're going to have to run that by me again. I'm going to have to watch the video a couple times. Or Lauren, you totally lost me. Or Lauren, that makes sense. Could you clarify this or that? And I'll go in afterwards and take a look at the comments, because I'm actually not following the comments right now, if there are any, because this is pretty intense information and I wanted to stay on point. So I will look at them when I'm done talking, if there are any right now. And so what does this mean then? Okay, you can look at the chronic pain in this new light, which will shift you. Just knowing this information, if you're understanding how powerful that is, that the pain is a healing sign, that can be a game changer right there. And it takes reminding yourself, because if you've believed for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years that your pain is a sign of you getting worse, that's a hard thing to just kind of instantly reprogram in your mind. And I get that. And there are ways, we can talk it into you, so to speak. We can talk about it enough and get that in the front part of your brain, and you're just remembering that, and you're, okay, I'm just going to keep reminding myself. But there are other techniques too. I use EFT a lot of times with people to help them move past limiting beliefs. whether it's a limiting belief about themselves and some judgment they have around themselves, or about something that's being experienced in the body, and our abilities to be able to shift out of that, and long held beliefs we have that we want to move past. So EFT does work really well with those kind of beliefs and allowing shifting to occur there. So we have that, we have those tools. There are also, as German New Medicine talks about, they don't talk about EFT, they talk about practical solutions and talking to people and having them just understand that. And that's a big piece, is just understanding all that I explained to you, so you can get out of that hanging healing, okay? The chronicity, you can get out of the chronicity of it all. And then practical solutions. For example, if you know, or you find out that the reason that you're constantly feeling self-devaluation is because of, for example, a relationship that isn't serving you, not helping you grow in any way, then that may be something for a person. They can say, you know what, maybe I can get out of that. And maybe people can just up and get out of those relationships if they're not serving them. It's not all about, specific relationships that you have to get up and out of. It sometimes has nothing to do with another person. But in this example, if you can just up and out of that, great. But sometimes people need emotional support. They need time to get strong enough on the emotional and mental level. And sometimes they need the finances to be able to move into new areas of their life. And that's scary for many people. That's scary. Change is scary. And that's when we're talking about chronic pain, there is so much of a chance for transformation in our lives. So in the process of addressing the pain and all the emotions involved with it, we are not only strengthening and healing the body, we're strengthening and healing the mind and our emotional well-being, which translates into other areas of our lives: financial well-being, well-being around how you show up at your work, how you show up in your family, so many areas. Whether or not you let your creativity that you've been maybe holding on to for some time, maybe you finally let it come out and share it with the world. So there's a lot of liberation that can be had, not just freeing ourselves from the actual physical experience of the pain, which is very real. Don't let anybody tell you it's not real. You experience it as real, it's real, and it's happening on the physical level. It indeed is happening. We have the science that shows us that. So let me know, put in the comments below, do you feel like you know what one of the major conflicts, you don't have to say what it is, you could just say, yes, I kind of know what my conflict or conflicts are that I'm dealing with emotionally right now. You can share what it is if you'd like. Just only disclose what makes you feel comfortable. And if you're saying, this is still a lot for me to take in, you just put that there, processing, and send me your questions, type them below, or send me a message. And what questions you have, those questions that you have, I will look forward to including and threading through the mind-body chats mind-body talks, I should say, mind-body talks that we're using going forward, and or that we're hosting going forward, and give you or present to you the answers to the questions that you need to be able to take this and run with it. So thank you so much for watching today, or watching the recording of this. And I look forward to seeing you in the future. Like the Life Core page, and if you do that, then you'll be able to see the live feed coming up in the future, so you're less likely to miss out, because I know everybody's schedule is really busy. So thank you again, and we'll see you next week, Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern. Bye now.